Thank you so much for taking part today. Really looking forward to chatting to you. Do you want to start by telling us a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Ross, and I'm the head of health and wellbeing for an organisation called Green Cross Global. We were traditionally a health and safety organisation,
Mm,
but actually we really start to see kind of the link between health, safety, and well-being. That everyone has a right to go to work physically healthy and mentally, and then come out. So I head up all the health and well-being of that in my spare time. I was a veteran of 24 years, so I'm an advisory board member for Ripple,
yeah.
which is absolutely amazing charity. I'm a volunteer with Shout, and I'm also an ambassador for Loose Heads, which is a rugby mental health charity. So
Awesome.
my son's 12-year-old rugby team. We make sure that their well-being's up where it should be.
Sounds good. So not busy at all. No.
Not busy at all. Yeah, in my
Keep
spare
busy.
times, I've got a neurotic cat. So
That sounds good. And do you know what? I was geeking out about this with one of your colleagues before about the link between health and safety and well-being.
yeah,
I think that's going to be like the next big
yeah,
wave that we see.
definitely. It used to be. Talk about 2, 3 years ago, it used to be kind of this, sometimes like a hot potato that kind of went round and like, who owns it? Is it HR? Is it a people's team? Is it health and safety? And then there'd be a bit of a bun fight, either that they owned it or they didn't own it.
Mm,
But actually, you're starting to see this real correlation between this physical health and the mental health, which everyone's been talking about,
yeah.
but really starting to see that happen. You've got the likes of health and safety, organisations like IOSH really talking, and NEBOSH really talking about stress and about mental health, and I think it's a really massive step forward.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it's I hope that it'll be taken more
Yeah,
seriously. I know it sounds silly, but
yeah,
I've been working in the world of well-being for 15 years, and people still think it's soft and fluffy at points. Not
yeah,
always,
yeah,
but at points. And health and safety, whether this is right or wrong, you can tell me. I feel like it's got a bit of a harder edge. If you go to a building site and someone says put a hard hat on,
you
you
do.
don't go thanks for that information, but I'm going to ignore it. You
Yeah,
you do what you're told. Whereas well-being, it tends
and
to.
I think for me, I think sometimes health and safety become really right black and white, isn't it? And
Mm,
you've got so many legislations, so many regulations that cover it, But to be honest, organisations still flout it, and even though it's the law. But kind of when we come over to the wellbeing side, for me, okay, you've got the Equality Act 2010, you've got stress risk assessing thing, but apart from that, I think there's not much else, you know,
mm,
clout that goes with it. And so when it's hard, when we think it's hard to get into organisations to be talking about this, and say, well, health and safety, yeah, they've got it all kind of sorted. They don't, because the other side of our organisation, my wingman, who's risk and compliance, he walks into internationally known organisations,
mm.
and they are still all over the place with their health and safety. So yeah,
That's not what I want to hear.
no, well, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you later which ones they are.
Yeah. Health and safety have got it absolutely sorted, and we're just going to follow that lead.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe not. What about the ISO standard? Do you think that's made a difference? Will make a difference? It's over a year now, right? Maybe 2 years that was launched, and I was expecting, because I'm a geek in this area,
Yeah.
the day after, all of a sudden everyone's taking well-being, mental health really seriously.
Yeah.
I've not really seen it have the impact, perhaps.
No, I think it's moving in the right direction,
Mm,
and I was like, oh yeah, I was really excited about it as well, and I thought actually, you know, and I've done a podcast with Peter Kelly, and we were just talking about it, and yeah, and it's absolutely the direction. I think we've got the issue a bit like all the other ISOs 9001, that organisations don't have to have it, and I think when we look at the small SMEs, where sometimes less is done, or it's all just shoved on. Oh, we've got an HR manager and we've got two mental health first aiders, and we're okay. For me, that's the bigger problem, where we have that, and organisations like that aren't going to look at those standards. They're not.
yeah.
For them, unfortunately, a lot of the time it is a tick box exercise just
Mm,
to be compliant, which is my worry. Lots of talk about, okay, we need to get this, first aid, or whatever format, we need to make it kind of the law. And for me, one hand, it's a brilliant thing. I
yeah.
think, yeah, it's a great step in the forward, but I also really, really worry.
Mm,
I really worry that it becomes this tick box exercise, or we've got it, we've done some e-learning, and
yeah.
that's it, and there's not the structure there to support
It's
them.
true. It's
And
true.
I think I really then get concerned, and as part of our consultancy, yeah, we do everything, but we including kind of the off the shelf MHFA courses. And when we hear like, oh, just one or two people, I'm the first aider for the organisation, I really worry for them. I worry for their well-being because they're not getting supported. And so, I'm kind of a juxtaposition between, I love the concept of we've got to do something. So, well, what do we look? Let's make it legal. But then if that's not backed up right and correctly, I think it's going to really impact a lot of people. It could actually do more damage than it does good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm the soothsayer, aren't I? It's like the rest of the day is going to be people talking about sunshines and rainbows.
So on solutions, like obviously we're here at the Watercooler. There's tons of people here. There's great talks going on. There's some great exhibitors I've spoke to. There's lots going on in this area.
Yeah.
But if you look at all the stats and around stress, anxiety, depression, all the rest, it's going in the opposite direction. So how do we arrest that trend, and how do we move the needle on this stuff?
Yeah, and it's interesting, because was it the Mental Health UK did the stress and burnout report that came out February this year, and yes, great stats, worrying, because this is stuff that legally all companies have to do this, and my concern is that we're same again. It's something that a tick box that organisations will do. They will write it. It'll go back on the shelf. And things like this, we need actionable initiatives, and it is brilliant being here, and the conversations we've already had. We're only like 11:15 in the morning, and some really, really great stuff. And I can see finally we're getting a move for prevention rather than reaction. Unfortunately, we're going to need the reaction because there's always going to be people. Unfortunately, they're going to be in crisis. But for me, there is a real move for prevention. So companies looking to instigate and promote healthy habits, looking at, the power that managers have. There's another report that said managers have more influence than your partner.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Mental health and your therapist, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's like, wow. Yeah, I told my wife that and she wasn't happy. And I said, no, it's just a stat. Don't ignore it. But and a move to support them. But for me, it really has to come into really looking at it, because that report that came out last month, when we look at the actions, it's the same actions that were last year, the year before, and it does make us just stop and think, well, why isn't it working? Why aren't we moving forward? And I think we need to look at it differently. From it's a legal requirement to have that. Okay, they know it's a legal requirement, and people aren't doing it. So is that enough? Do we need to see? It's hard. Do we need to see the HSE swing into action, swing the doors open, go in and actually call an organisation to account? Because we keep hearing that, oh no, they're going to do this. But for me, then that part, and then we look at RID or reportable stuff, and suicide isn't RID or reportable, right. And you're seeing more and more of workplace stresses that are impacting people's mental health. It's not very joined up, is it? I don't think so. No. For me, it's about actionable, looking at the data of an organisation, and there are some great organisations, including us, that will actually, start not to look at nice to have, but actually looking at data and giving it actually. And for me, it's about putting that person first, looking at right from when they join the organisation, are we getting the language correct there? How do we nurture them? How do we make them productive? How do we keep them? Because if we can do that, there's legal requirement, but the moral obligation for that, as I say, to people can go home physically and mentally healthy. So, these reports are great. It's, have we really cracked it? Or is it just a floodgate that's open that, we're so much switched on to everything, to phones, and, I think we had a bit of a pause when we hit COVID in some ways, and we kind of went back to like 1950s a little bit, and it was quite nice, wasn't it? It was idyllic,
In what way? Going back?
I think the need for pleasing everybody kind of changed. The rat race stopped. Everyone, I'm not talking about people working from home, and because that obviously created created a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress for some individuals. It also helped a lot of people as well. It helped the mental health conversation, I think, because actually it showed that everybody, even the most stalwart of people, actually struggled.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, I think I'm seeing lots about vulnerable leadership, and I love that. Even I'm a secret maths fan, and they talked about vulnerability on that the other day.
I love that program.
Yeah.
Oh, you talk about Married at First Sight.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I
love it. It was with Timothy, and they were talking, the Tin Man. I'm sharing too much. And they were talking about how powerful vulnerability is. And I think we need to have more conversations like that. So going back to your original one, which was about 10 minutes ago, your question about, well, how do we do it? I think authenticity, being open, being honest, and that comes from the leaders. The day of we roll our sleeves up and we get on with it. I came from a very masculine background of the armed forces for 24 years. And the armed forces is a lot better now, but 80s, 90s, not so great. It was the classic pull your socks up. And I've tried to do lots of research. Does it help with circulation? I don't know. But we need to see vulnerability, because that breeds connection, that breeds authenticity. And actually then if you've got a leader saying to the team that I'm struggling, then they are more likely to come forward, and then we can do something about it and actually look at the issues that are going on, and then that might hopefully start to bring stress levels down. Because, and I love the HSC bit, they say, stress is the adverse reaction to pressure. And I talk a lot about, okay, saber-toothed tiger, fight or flight theory. Yeah, in the life or death situation, stress can be really good. But we're not in that situation 99% of the time, are we? We're in this situation where answering an email within 3 minutes, it becomes our saber-toothed tiger, and we're getting the same reactions, and it's just not healthy for us, and then you go and speak to leaders and say, well, I've got to this position, stress is part of the job. Look at your job description, where does it say? And so I think vulnerable leadership for me is, if we can make more people vulnerable and say that that's actually a strength to be vulnerable, that will cascade down, and then people, when they start to feel under too much pressure, they will say something, and then before it cascades down into their stress, they're anxious, they're off work, they're having physical ailments, and then the longer we leave them, the more damage is going to be done. And
I hate to say this, it takes time. It takes far much. I agree with you on the vulnerability piece. There's a difference. I've seen this between true vulnerability and performative vulnerability. I've seen that in big corporates where it's we're going to do a YouTube, video 2 minutes long with the CEO telling us about something in their personal life, and it just doesn't feel quite real. It doesn't feel right. And as you said before, does that do more harm than good? Because someone looks at that and thinks they're trying to force me to be vulnerable, and they're not being authentic themselves.
And that's it. What authenticity comes down to. Whatever we do, it has to be genuine, open, honest, and authentic. Because if not, you're right. It'll just be, here's just a corporate line that they're doing. Look at the CEO. Look at their hardships. Off you go to your weekend house.
People can tell as well.
Tell,
I think.
And I think what we also need to look at is we need to look at those triggers that are impacting us. Back on that report, right up there is our financial well-being. And that's a real hard one. Because companies are also looking at what they spend as well. They're looking at their wages, and they can't just pay people more.
No.
So we need to, and for me, I think we're caught in a bit of a chicken and egg, like a hamster thing going around. That we're saying, well, it's okay to be vulnerable. Let's we will support you, but then their back to work or their sickness pay policy won't reflect that, because it'll be statutory 21 days, and you're going to go on to pittance that the government give you. And people say, well, the cost of living, I can't afford to do that. And actually, we work with great guys over at Finwell, and they say the amount of organisations that have got people that rely on overtime as part of as a part of their standard wage. So, and I think this is where and it will take time, and it's conversations of it's to get policies, procedures married up, because we're saying it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to take some time off, But actually, our policy doesn't say that. Our policy says, you can have 21 days, and then, well, people can't afford to be ill.
Yeah, I love how you describe that as a chicken and egg. I see that all the time.
Yeah,
also the chicken and egg between personal responsibility and employer responsibility as well. That's something else I see. So, it used to be all personal responsibility. Resilience training, you just need to toughen up. The employer doesn't need to do anything. There's been a real shift towards the employer-based stuff. So, the policies and all this sort of thing. That's great. But you do a needs analysis across an organisation, and the needs analysis shows up that people aren't paid enough and they've got too much to do.
Yeah.
And then they look at that and they go, maybe we should do some resilience training. It goes back to the And it's like, well, if you're going to do that needs analysis, you've got to be willing to make the proper decisions on the preventative end as well.
Yeah, and those needs analyses are amazing. However, organisations, once they've done them, then it's really damaging if they don't do anything with that information. We've asked the people have talked, and now we're going to ignore them.
Yeah,
it's like, you should have bothered asking them in the first place. But yeah, it's and I do think it is a balance. As I say, we used to have, it's all about resilience. Well, if you've got your saber-toothed tiger sat there still in work, and you've gone off to do a nice retreat for the weekend, when you come back in, it's not going to solve the problem. It's still sat there. And then, you're right. The whole focus went to the business, and I do think it is a bit of a blend of both. It has to be. We have to personally take a little bit of responsibility. Especially, because this is individually led. And going back to where are we with well-being against health and safety? Say health and safety is very, very black and white. When we look at our well-being, well, it isn't, because the stress, anxiety, any condition will be very different for the individual. But then actually on a Monday it'll be very different than it will be on a Tuesday. And I think that's where it struggles. So for me, because it's so personal, the individual has to have, with the correct support, some responsibility in that. Because it can't just be down to the organisation, because if you've got 500 people there that are all individuals, how do they ever manage that? But it's a blend.
I wrestle with that all the time as well. Because 100 people fall off a ladder, 100 people get hurt. 100 people work a 16-hour day, and it will affect half of them. It won't affect the other half. They've got no kids. They've got nothing better to do with their time, so it's not a big.
But then don't you find as well then that the ones that then that can do that, then it's kind of eventually long term setting them up to fail, because you got someone in your team that handles pressure really well. What's the manager do? Just shove more on them and more on them and more on them, because you can handle the pressure. But at some point, we've all got our tipping point, haven't we?
Absolutely, yeah. So, in the last couple of minutes, what's the question that you'd wished I'd asked you that I haven't asked so far?
So we do our own podcast, and we always finish with that question as well. What's my favourite cheese?
Oh yeah, what's your favourite cheese?
Stinking Bishop.
Nice. Why?
Not because of the name, just because it's gooey texture and it's quite a strong flavour. I love it. No, so sorry, it's going to be random. I knew it was going to be random. What else are we seeing move? A lot of authenticity in language as well. A lot more. We see. So we're partnering here with Thrive, that are a neurodiversity specialist. And that's kind of
interesting.
A big boom that's coming where mental health was 2-3 years ago. But bigger than that, I think those words are like neurodiversity is really opening that ED&I space that was a bit. It seemed to be quite niche. Maybe that was like the dark arts. But it's now bringing it into the forward. And we've already had conversations today of someone saying, well, about inclusion. Oh yeah, no, and we've got great ERG groups for LGBTQ plus, and said okay, and other groups, and well, no, that's it, isn't it? And so terms like that are becoming more familiar, like neurodiversity, is opening that conversation about us truly being inclusive.
This is a big question, but do you right at the end?
Is it not about cheese?
No, not quite. No, but do you think there's a risk that the DEI? So I'm a big advocate of the DEI agenda and its links to well-being, and I think they go hand in hand. Is there a risk that, because, like it or not, it brings with it some negative press or some pushback from people who are really not into that, and that well-being will get brought into the same, people think, well, well-being doesn't matter either, and that's just
cool. Yeah.
I don't know what the answer to that is, because what's the answer? What,
Yeah,
to
that
forget
we don't.
about it?
Let's just not do it just in
Exactly.
case. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's a bit like when you go into an organisation. You say, well, you're going to get the people that are there, and especially HR specialists that really struggle. That they have some people that will see a really flexible approach that's inclusive for everybody. That system is taken for granted by some, and I always kind of flick back to, look, that's nature. There's going to be people that will find the path of least resistance for their own agenda. However, if it truly helps one person in that team, then surely that's a good thing.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
Great place to finish.
Cool.
Right. Thank you so much for your time today.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much for the